Did you know whole grains are superfood? Part 2. We started part 1 last week, and did you know that you were going to get a test this morning? Can anybody remember the 3 parts? The 3 parts that make up a... Oh, we have a hand over there. Yes?
Germ, endosperm, and bran?
Yep.
Right.
The germ, the endosperm, and the bran, those are the 3 parts that make up the whole thing. That's what we call whole grain. And which one is normally removed when it is highly refined? Anybody know what is removed? The bran and endosperm is removed when it is highly refined, and that's where all the nutrients
I thought it was the bran and the germ.
The bran and the germ, I'm sorry.
Right.
Did I say the endosperm? Sorry. The bran and the germ, that's where all the nutrient is. That's removed. Okay, let's look at what next we have. And we also learned last week that whole grains are very high in vitamins, especially B vitamins. Very high in antioxidants, very high in fiber, but what else? Newer researchers have found the super nutritive phytochemical value of whole grain. Remember that word, phytochemical?
Yes,
Plant.
Anybody know what that is?
Plant chemicals.
Good. Plant-based, the chemicals in plants, or the nutrients in plants. Okay. They are rich in phenols, and we're going to look at those, lignan, and phytosterols. Also contain allergic acid and vitamin E, like tocotrienol. That's a form of vitamin E, as found in nuts. Let's look a little further. The phenols. These are substances that inhibit the enzymes that can mutate critical genes and cause cancer. So did you know whole grains can help to protect you from cancer? They can. They also contain lignans. Lignans are a major structural constituent of plants. They are anti-tumor and antiviral. Studies suggest that lignan is structurally similar to estrogen and binds weakly to estrogen receptors. So for us female especially, those of us who are in the process of going through menopause and so, lignans can bind to estrogen, and it can help to decrease, because high amount of estrogen in our system can also cause breast cancer and different cancers. So lignans can help to decrease the risk of those also in whole grain. The primary source of lignans are flaxseed, rye, buckwheat, soy, millet, oats, and barley. And that the lignans act as weak estrogen, so they bind to the receptors and help to prevent a lot of estrogen from binding to the receptors, so it lowers the estrogen. They also have phytosterols. Phytosterols block cancer-causing estrogen hormone off their path. So whole grain, with all of the wholeness in it, can help to decrease the risk of cancer. And that's what we are going to look at today. As I said, we're going to do a few sections on this because whole grain does a lot. Whole grain and reduction of cancer risk. Whole grain food are rich sources of antioxidants comparable to many fruits and vegetables. Antioxidants help to counteract oxidative stress, which produce chronic and acute cell injury leading to tumor development. Okay, and let me do a little bit on that. Oxidative stress is like when the body uses up oxygen, the process of breaking down food and everything, it produces a lot of waste products, and those can cause injury to our system. Even the process of breathing, when oxygen is used up, it produces products that can be injurious to our system if not removed properly. And antioxidants in whole grain help to counteract that we do not get all the illnesses like tumor development and things like that. Research suggests that whole grain intake lowers the risk of hormone-dependent cancer by reducing serum estrogen in premenopausal women. Data from several studies show that subjects with the highest intake of whole grain bread and pasta had a 30 to 60% lower risk of developing endometrial cancer and a 37 to 40% lower risk of developing ovarian cancer. So,
Praise the Lord.
God knows why He gave us what He gave us.
Amen.
So, I know a lot of people are afraid of carbs. And the carbs to be afraid of is the one that is highly processed, removing the bran and the germ. But the whole grain is actually beneficial to our system.
Amen.
Research suggests that high levels of blood glucose and insulin and high body weights are associated with increased incidences of colon cancer. That's highly documented in a lot of researches. Eating whole grain can lower the risk of colon cancer by reducing blood glucose level and insulin responses, and also improve insulin sensitivity. And we're going to do a little bit more later on insulin and diabetes also. So eating whole grain can help to reduce the amount of insulin that your body needs for digesting highly processed carbohydrates. Because the more whole grain in there, it is absorbed and digested much slower, and your body doesn't produce a whole lot of insulin as when you do the very refined carbohydrates. Power tip. Color is not an indication of whole grain. Because something is brown doesn't mean it is whole grain. Bread may be brown because molasses or caramel color has been added, not because it contains a significant amount of whole grain.
Oh, come on.
I know. Other foods may contain whole grain but may not be brown. For example, Cheerios. Cheerios is a good source of whole grain, and it's not very brown as some of our brown bread. So brown bread does not necessarily mean that it's a whole grain bread. Remember that. And I'll give you some more information on that as we go along, a lot more. And then we have our food for thought. It is a religious duty of those who cook to learn how to prepare healthful food in different ways so that it may be eaten with enjoyment.
Amen.
And I firmly believe that too. What branch of education, of the education of the young lady can be so important as this? And I dare to say the young men also. Is my diet such as will bring me in a position where I can accomplish the greatest amount of good? And that's a question we need to ask ourselves. Are we eating in a way that what we eat can help us to accomplish the greatest amount of good? The Lord intends to bring His people back to live upon simple fruits, vegetables, and grains. God provided fruit in its natural state for our first parents. All the elements of nutrition are contained in the fruits, vegetables, and grains. Grains and fruits prepared free from grease and in as natural a condition as possible should be the food for the table of all who claim to be preparing for translation to heaven. Are we preparing for heaven?
We should be.
Yes, we should be. So this is just an aspect of what
You know, we
should
can
be.
read that sentence backwards and really say something to ourselves, because if we are professing to striving for that, then how is our tables?
Right. Yep. Our tables are indication of what we are professing and what we are striving for. Okay, and again, whole grains are superfoods to your health.